When driving a car in comic books, different rules apply that you might not normally think of. In comics, there weren't many seatbelts, so you were always sure to be thrown free from the vehicle if there was ever any problems. It's a wonder anyone ever survives around comic book automobiles. You don't even have to be driving. Oh sure, we've all ran off the road numerous times, and that was before cell phones. We've all driven right into a lake and dove out the side door. Sometimes we even dove out of that same door while someone from inside the car was shooting at us. These things happen. But fortunately for us, we had superheroes to protect us from all of these moving violations. Take Action Comics, for example. If there was ever any driver safety concerns, they usually got settled thanks to Superman. Back in 1939, a good friend of Superman's was ran over by a reckless driver. Well, at least that's what someone in the crowd told Clark Kent what had allegedly happened. It is possible that Clark's friend blatantly walked out in front of a car, but in spite of who was to blame, Superman decides to wage a war on the entire city of Metropolis and enforce his own laws. Upon arriving at a radio station, instead of walking in the front door like any normal person, Superman breaks into the building. I suppose we could give him the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps this was a Sunday and the front door locked after 5 p.m. But you or I would have simply made an appointment. Superman then demands entrance into the on-air studio, and since Superman is not an authorized employee of the radio station, he's politely refused entry instead of obeying the law and maintaining the integrity of truth, justice, and the American way. Superman breaks more private property. He's become a terrorist. Again, Superman is told no, but no doesn't really mean no in Superman's new communist takeover. Now we can add physical assault to Superman's crimes, and he threatens to make a beeline to the engineer's gizzard if they turn off his microphone. Threatening gizzards was apparently done quite often in 1939. Superman now informs the puny humans of Metropolis that there's a new sheriff in town and basically issues a threat over the airwaves. He declares war on reckless drivers, and since the violators will have to answer directly to Superman, this makes him the judge and jury, which probably violates a few constitutional rights of the American motorist. Fortunately, someone had called the police, and they arrived to arrest the lawbreaker, but Superman is above the law. He now breaks out of the radio station and resists arrest, making him a fugitive from justice. Superman then finds the city parking garage where certain vehicles have been towed away, while the owners of the vehicles await their trial dates in a court of law, as some of them might actually be innocent. Superman decides to smash the cars because apparently he subscribes to the ideology that cars kill people, not drivers. If you should happen to clear your throat and say, "Excuse me, Superman, that car belongs to me. I'm the owner. I bought and paid for it." Well, too bad. You might have an accident using this car, but Superman will see to it you can't. Later that day, Superman notices a policeman pulling over a speeder. He stops and watches to see if the policeman will actually give a ticket for speeding or let the citizen off with a warning. Using his super hearing, he overhears the citizen offer the policeman a $10 bill to let him off the hook. $10 back then was like $1 million or something, so we can almost forgive the policeman who was momentarily tempted to take the money. But like most nervous people who are about to do something wrong, the policeman looks around to see if anyone is watching, and lo and behold, he sees Superman staring at him. Knowing about Superman's war against bad driving, he decides to not take the bribe, and instead he punches the citizen in the head for daring to bribe him. Of course, in 1939, you could smack people around all the time, but this cop doesn't even bother to arrest the law-breaking Superman, who was standing nearby. If the patrolman had heard about Superman's war against cars, then surely he knew that Superman had resisted arrest, and at the very least, he should be detained until backup arrives, although at this point, the police probably know that any attempt to arrest Superman is not going to be routine. And then finally, to end the story on a snappy and whimsical upbeat joke, Clark Kent has parked his car improperly and is now getting a ticket. While he complains, or at least pretends to complain, to the officer about it, he thinks about the situation for a minute and he decides to think positively about this, as his so-called war on bad driving has made all policemen ticket-happy patrolmen. This is the kind of America Superman wants, where you can abuse people, destroy their property, break into any building, and resist arrest, but at least people will be scared to drive improperly, and virtually everyone will get a ticket for all kinds of minor violations. And now that we know about how how Superman feels about automobiles, this might actually explain what was going on the previous year on the cover of Action Comics #1. The owner's tailpipe was probably too low, or there was no passenger window. The cover of Action 33 has a giant Superman stealing an armored car with small people in it, while concerned citizens try to prevent this. But later, Superman would make up for this terror by taking this family that can't afford new tires safely to a nearby park. Not having tires is okay, apparently, as long as you give Superman some advance warning. And I realize that Superman might not be your cup of tea, so perhaps you should consider the Green Arrow. We all know that standing in a convertible, which, believe it or not, is called the Arrowmobile, and shooting arrows at cars in front of you is perfectly acceptable. So is allowing your Arrowmobile to crash into trees, possibly killing or maiming people. Anything is justified to take a bite out of crime.
Now hold on there, graphic man. You've been showing dynamic images of absurdity, but let's not forget that comics did have some valuable automobile information. Who could forget the lovely comic book titled How to Be an Expert Driver?
Now look, literature lad, I was going to mention those. For example, the one we're looking at right now came out in 1946. It was produced by the Ford Motor Company.
Oh sure, the graphics are nice, but we should slow down and read this great literature and the marvelous wordplay the author uses.
But we've got so much more to show the viewers. Besides, they can always pause the video if they want to back up and see that wonderful wordplay you described.
Were you going to mention that they made another book in 1947?
No, I wasn't.
Well, maybe Ford Motor Company isn't your thing. Perhaps you'd like to read Woody Woodpecker Gets a Chevrolet.
I'm sure the viewers would rather get back to the superhero.
If you like Dodge, you can read where Roy Rogers gets a 1955 Dodge.
Maybe later. Back to the bad driving. It's obvious to see what's going wrong in this picture.
Yes, women drivers.
Speaking of women, here's Wonder Woman performing the same car over the head maneuver. In fact, this was done numerous times by different comic characters from different publications. Driving your car into a building seems to be just fine for cars, as you see virtually no damage is done to this car. This seems to be the preferred method of entering into a building, as demonstrated by one of the first appearances of the Batmobile, never mind who might be standing on the other side of the wall. We'll get back to Batman shortly. In the world of comics, it doesn't matter how old you are, everybody can drive. Just be sure to follow some basic rules. Donald Duck reminds us to always come to a complete stop before you get to the crosswalk, while Mickey Mouse predicts that the oil industry can help you maintain your car for many years. To help find your car in a huge parking lot, you might consider altering your ride to be more visibly unique and reflect your personality, like Catman. Yes, Catman. And if you think his Catmobile is a copy of Batman, well, for a brief period of time, Spider-Man actually drove around in a Spider-Mobile. Thanks to the mechanical know-how of the Human Torch, the Spider-Mobile was able to mimic Spider-Man's powers like web shooting, and it could even climb walls. I'm not sure if Superman would have approved of these unsafe driving conditions, but we'll never know if he even found out about it because the Spider-Mobile was short-lived. But it was easy to find in the crowded parking lot. So was the Joker-Mobile. Here the Joker has a one-seater, but it wasn't tall enough to be seen next to a bunch of SUVs, so he switched to this taller minivan with a big pink letter J on the side for maximum visibility. But let's face it, the most recognizable car in comics is the Batmobile, driving through walls as Batman's recreational sport. Having his leg in a cast doesn't stop Batman from popping the clutch and enjoying the open road. Nor is Batman too worried about Robin's safety, as he clearly tolerates stunts like this, and he wants them to happen apparently all the time. He's clearly an automobile expert, and has more vehicles than Jay Leno. Whether it's cutting people off on the highway or surviving a rhinoceros attack, Batman has seen it all and done it all. But how did he get to be an expert on vehicular safety? It was revealed in the three-part miniseries The Untold Legend of Batman. It goes into detail about how young Bruce Wayne decided to be a policeman, which was a way that he could help avenge the murder of his parents. But in the schooling that comes with this kind of training, a scenario is presented to the classroom involving two men that steal a car. After they drive away, the second thief wants to get out of the car, but the driver won't let him, and then they run over a pedestrian. Should the second man be charged with manslaughter? Bruce argues that the one criminal who changed his mind and wanted out of the car should only be charged with theft. The teacher informs Bruce that he's wrong. According to the law, both criminals are charged with manslaughter. Bruce says, "That's not justice." But the teacher says, "It's the law, not necessarily justice." And it's this disagreement over vehicular manslaughter that causes Bruce Wayne to not become a policeman, but to instead become the Batman. And that decision has worked out wonderfully, because during World War II, Batman was able to run over some enemy soldiers. He was able to throw a rifle into the wheels of the enemy, causing them to crash violently, which killed and maimed people. But all's fair in love and war. So what did we learn today? Well, probably nothing. And we weren't supposed to. After all, these are comic books, and we should be able to enjoy them on a less serious level. So until next time, be safe out there and take Ace the Bat Hound out for a car ride.